Paul Rakovich. I've known Paul for a few years. He will not really talk to you about engineering. You hear that, and you live and breathe that at BlueStamp. So he has an interesting, we were chatting about what he could chat about. So it's a good, interesting path and lots to share. I'll let you introduce yourself in whatever context you want to. Paul wears different hats.
Sure.
Do you mind if we record you?
Yeah, go for it.
And then I will, I'll keep track of time so you're not late for your next thing.
Okay, cool. Thanks for inviting me in. I appreciate it. You guys are all much smarter than I am. I figured that out in the first couple minutes right after that. So good job there. I'm not a public speaker. I don't, I'm a business owner. I run a business in online marketing. So I've had a very interesting career path, and basically no one ever talked about entrepreneurship when I was in school. We always came in and said, like, what do you want to do? And the dad who was the fireman would come in, and the dad who was the policeman would come in, lawyer, doctor, things like that. But no one ever really talked about entrepreneurship. So I figured I would just kind of riff on some stuff today, like lessons that I've learned. Definitely open up to any questions. You can ask me anything on anything. But really no one ever talked about entrepreneurship. So, and there was one kid I went to school with that like always had all the cool stuff. His parents owned a very boring business by most standards, but by definition he was the most successful of everyone else. So there's interesting, I'm just gonna spiff on some stories and stuff that comes to mind. I've got like 3 things I thought would be appropriate. So there's a story of Ford. Ford was around. The government sued him for antitrust. And so they put him up in front of Congress, and Congress basically what they wanted to do is make him look like a fool in front of everyone. So they started asking him, tell us about mufflers, right? And tell us about steel fabrication. Tell us about carburetors. And they really wanted to make him look like an idiot, was the plan. So they barraged him for like 3 days. And at the end of the 3 days, he said, why would I need to know all this stuff? I have buttons on my desk. And if I want to know about carburetors, press a button, and the guy who knows more about carburetors than anyone else in the world comes to my office and answers any questions I have. And if I want to know about steel procurement, I press another button on my desk, and the smartest guy in the world around steel procurement comes to my office and will answer any questions that I have. And basically, kind of shut the government down at that point. That's kind of what entrepreneurship is. So we can basically hire or find the answer to any question that we want. We don't have to learn it. So in school, for me, it was always, I had to learn it, I had to be the best at it, I had to take these classes. If I wanted to do another type of engineering, I had to change my major and do that instead. And now if I want to do a different type of engineering, I just hire that talent and expertise. So very different. And no one ever talked about it. We never had any entrepreneurs come in and tell us about the journey. It's basically, someone described it, I was at a class for the last 4 days down at MIT, entrepreneurship. Someone described it as a full contact sport. So similar to what you're doing, kind of whatever you dream up, you can do. So if you make a really kick-ass RFID card, and you think that people might want it, and you can make money off of it, and you understand the business behind it, then you go do it. Right? No one's going to tell you not to do it. There's different parts to the business. So there's kind of the finance part. Let me back up. So people talk a lot about like having a great idea and being great, thinking of like the perfect idea or the coolest idea. And a good analogy to that is on patents, people with the idea are paid about 1% of revenue. So the idea isn't actually the most important part, although that's what gets publicized a lot, and that's what people think is really cool, right? Hey, these guys have this awesome idea that there's all this unused capacity with cars, and if people have that need and they can connect to that capacity, you can have a business, right? Uber is born, and Uber is insanely valuable, right? Or Airbnb, at one point, Airbnb, like that a little bit. So they're the largest, basically, if you were to put them in the context of a hotel, they have more rooms than anyone else does, and they've done it in like 5 or 6 years. Whereas it's taken like Hilton Corporation 60, 70 years to do half of what they've done. So people credit that with the idea, like the idea is the coolest thing, I gotta come up with a really cool, awesome idea. There's actually, the idea is a really small portion of it. So there's the execution of it, there's the finance of it, and there's the management of it that make up a business. And what's cool, what I think is cool, and being as smart as you guys are and figuring stuff out, is that you can know a little bit about stuff, but you don't have to know everything, right? You don't have to be the expert on RFID. You can know enough about it to hire the 5 best people in the world to build your product and take it to market. And then you can hire the best person that's great at doing sales for it. And you can hire the best person that's great at managing people for that as well. You don't have to figure it all on your own. So the big secret is that I'm not as smart as pretty much everyone that works for me, right? But I pay them because they're the best at what they do, and I know enough to kind of get around. So a couple of other stories that I wanted to convey with you that have been pretty impactful. You doing all right so far?
Yes.
All right. Do I look like I know what I'm doing a little bit? Totally winning. So there's this really cool story about Honda Motor Corporation. Most people, most business schools, and most schools focus on what's called strategic growth. So you have a strategic plan, right? Which is, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to architect the perfect plan to make my RFID password safe, right? When we think about that in life, I want to architect the perfect plan to go to the perfect school, to get the perfect job, that's going to get the perfect promotion, where of course I'm going to meet the perfect guy, right? And I'm going to have the perfect family, and the perfect kids, and so on and so forth. So strategic growth is awesome, but it's only about half of it. There's another thing called divergent growth that's incredibly important as well, that almost no one focuses on. So I'll give you a really cool example. So Honda Motor Corporation came to the United States. They wanted to sell motorcycles in the United States. And what happened was the engine wasn't used to long trips, because obviously in Japan the trips are shorter, and so the engine was leaking. And they had very limited resources back then. They weren't the mega corporation that they are now, or weren't quite as far along. And so what would happen is really smart people come in a room, they try and figure it out, and then on lunch break they would take the Honda Cub and they take it out in the desert and romp it out in the desert. And these guys are really frustrated, like they're running out of money, they're running out of resources. The strategic plan to fix this and all the really smart stuff just like is not working, and they're running out of money. It's looking like they're gonna have to close up shop. So on the break again, just you guys go out to lunch, they take the Honda Cub out into the desert. And what happens is a couple people out in the desert notice them. And they go up to the guy and they go, hey, would you maybe order one of these for me? They're like, well, they're not available, but we can bring them from Japan, and I guess if you want, I can get you one. And so they ordered a Honda Cub for this guy. He gets one. He starts driving it around. A couple other people notice it. They say, hey, where'd you get this from? This is super cool. So they order a couple more from Japan, a couple more from Japan, a couple more from Japan, to the point where the Honda Cub becomes a huge success. And what they end up doing is taking the profits from the Cub and funneling it into the engineering to figure out the problem with the regular motorcycles. So there's the divergent growth of these guys going out to the just screwing around basically, right? And that's what made it successful, and that's what funded everything else. So you can look at, like, I have a specific plan, this is it, I'm going to go to school, this is my degree, I'm going to meet this girl, I have 2.5 kids, I get a job and a raise. But no one ever talks about the divergent growth part of that. They're just paying attention to opportunities, and that's where all this really cool, a lot of really cool stuff comes from. I'll give you another example. So a friend of mine owns a business back east around, they do lawn fertilizing. Really boring, not much to it. And they have a certain cost to acquire customers. And this is going to sound old to you guys. They have a certain cost to acquire customers. So it costs them $275 to acquire a customer. The customer's worth about $60 per quarter. So it takes them about 4 quarters just to get their money back. So what he went through is something called the X Factor. And the X Factor, again, isn't about answering the perfect question with the perfect answer. It's about finding a better question to ask. So he asked, how can I get this cost per acquisition from $275 to $27? And everyone, of course, said that's not possible, right? Because you have to send someone down to a house, they have to measure it, they have to come back, they have to input it in the computer, and there's just a cost to that. Then we have to call this person back. We have to harangue them. It takes 3 or 4 calls to get a hold of someone around dinner time, and then hopefully we sell them and make time. So we started asking this impossible question that was a constraint for the industry. So industry constraint was everyone had to go around, everyone had to measure, everyone had to call people 3 times, annoy them at dinner, finally get them to buy. So look for industry constraints we're looking for, and then figure out how to solve those with an interesting question, with the right question. So what he ended up coming up with was, this was back before Google Earth was around. He acquired the rights to satellite photography and developed a program to measure the yards of space. So they already knew what it was going to cost before they even showed up. And then they could call people up, telemarket people, call them and tell them, hey, I know what this is going to cost to do your yard. Right? So they took the cost per acquisition, didn't get to 27, it got to like 32. So the segue to this is, if you shoot for a 7 to 10x, some people call that moonshot thinking, even if you totally fall on your butt, and you do it 2-3 times better, pretty good. If you try and take it from 270 to 265, you'll get there. It's probably almost going to take as much work. So 7 to 10x thinking, industry constraint, and this is back, this is a while ago. People would get freaked out, like, how did you know I had a tree in my backyard and a pool? Like, are you looking over my fence? Like, people really thought people were like keeping them in the backyard and checking stuff out. So look for industry constraints. How can you solve them? And not what's the right answer, but what's the right question to ask people about that. So another cool part to this story, in terms of divergent growth, was he looked at everything. He talked to this guy, and this guy said, everything is a blessing and be grateful for everything. Right? There's no bad things that happen. Everything has a purpose. So in the business, they had to buy fertilizer. Fertilizer is a commodity, so the price to it goes up and down over time. And when it's low, you stock up. Right? That lowers your costs and puts you in a good place. So he stocked up. He had this barn, bought about $500,000 of fertilizer where he normally had about $40,000. And the guy was in there doing some work with the torch, put the building on fire. You can picture the big black plumes of smoke, right? So his dad came running down the street. He was like, I had a feeling you guys were up to something, and I knew this would be you. And he's like, yeah, you're right. By the way, I forgot to tell my insurance agent that we have $500,000 of stuff in here. It kind of didn't raise my policy, so we kind of just lost $460,000. And he looked at it and he goes, this is a blessing. But there's something good to this. I don't know what it is right now, but there's something awesome to it. So what ended up happening was they had been working with a guy who, one of the problems with fertilizer is that obviously it grows grass, but it also grows algae and causes problems with water. And your engineers probably could give me the technical explanation on that. They're better than I can. But it's basically bad. So their business was creating this problem, like perpetuating this problem, and they wanted to solve it. They talked to some people about probiotic growth and different natural things, and they thought it was a little bit on the kooky side, and they thought, yeah, maybe, but it's probably going to be a little more expensive. We don't know if this guy's a little Looney Tune or not. So he can't get any more money. He's out $460,000 roughly. Business is going to tank. And they call up the guy for this natural solution, and they're like, hey, will you give us $100,000 of product on loan, and we'll start using it. So basically forced into using it, and now that business has grown, and they're actually bringing that product to market. And the business is going to be even bigger than just taking care of people's lawn. So another divergent growth problem, taking something that we just burned our bar down, we're out almost $500,000, we're kind of screwed, we might as well just close up shop. And he looked at it and said that this is an opportunity. I don't know what it is just yet, but I know for certain that it is. So divergent growth, not very long. I feel like I'm talking long. Questions? Sure.
So you talk about how parts of like how things end up working. Like part of it is how you planned it out, and part of it is by this like divergent idea that you have. But with like, for example, with the motorcycle and the guys in the desert and such. I mean, it seems to me a lot like, not luck, but just happenstance.
Totally.
And so if you want to, it's kind of difficult to like think about engineering this divergent growth to happen. You know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
You can't light your barn on fire on purpose and hope that it does something good for it, right?
That's only one way to find out.
Exactly. So, like, how can this like idea be used and implemented in like a real world?
Yeah, I think you got to be. It's an awesome question. So how can you use this idea in the world? So one is just being in the fight and figuring stuff out, right? So if we look at, if you read Elon Musk's biography, not autobiography, biography, right? He gets these crazy smart guys together, and which, by the way, you should all read a lot. So one of the common traits of every entrepreneur that I know is they read a ton. Like they read a lot, more than anyone else that I know. So in the biography, they talk about making the rocket, and he's got this big. The reason he's really doing it is to build a settlement on Mars. As kooky, crazy as it sounds. So you almost have to go to like the lunatic fringe in some cases. But he gets these really smart people together, and when you don't hear about that, everyone looks at it and goes, Elon Musk is so smart, and this guy's awesome, and SpaceX and Tesla, and it must be amazing. But if you get into the nitty-gritty detail of it, like there's all kinds of different stories of adversity where they figured stuff out and turned stuff around because of that. So they go to test the rocket to a government site, and all the big players are there, and they're like, they're not going to let these guys in, right? So they're like, okay, 6 months, you can launch your rocket in 6 months or so. They don't have that. So they end up going to an island called Kwajalein. It's an island. It's an atoll. But there's an old military base, and they start launching there, and they start shipping parts there, and they're literally just like, breaking shit all the time. So they get it all the way down there. They finally launch it, and they basically blew up 3 rockets. And the 4th like had to make it, or else like they're pretty much done at that point. And I think you just got to be in the fight. You got to figure stuff out. Like one of the things that happened was on one of the launches. I don't remember the story exactly. One of the launches, one of the seals didn't hold, and that was a problem for it. So Elon blamed his #1 guy. And what happened was because they were down at sea level, salt had built up. So this is like the brightest minds in the world, right? I mean, these guys, they know their stuff, and they didn't plan for that. So they get out there and they blow some stuff up and figure out, hey, I've got a plan for salt, and actually, from screwing stuff up and breaking stuff, it makes it better. So I think you just gotta literally be in the fight and not be afraid to screw stuff up. Another good, more practical, like engineering way to look at that is to look at what your major assumptions are. So I'll give you another story on that. And testing your major assumptions first. So if you're gonna need to blow up a whole rocket, maybe you can blow up a small piece of the pie, right? So what are your major assumptions with your project? How can you test those quickly and easily without bankrupting yourself? So an example of that where it went wrong was Disneyland Europe. So Disneyland Europe was built, and Disneyland has all kinds of data. They know their people, they know how many people live around, they know how much money they make, they know how many kids they have, and they have these statistical models that they're pretty darn good. So they build Disneyland Europe, they invest all this money in it, and it ends up losing billions. It's like one of the biggest business failures out there. And it goes back to their major assumptions. So they made major assumptions on the amount of people that lived around the area, how much money they made, and out of that, the model came back and said, you're going to have like 40 million park days is how they measure it, right? And so out of that, they said, okay, at a typical Disneyland, someone stays for 3 nights. So out of 40 million park days, this many people, we need this many hotel rooms, so they build the hotel rooms. Again, investing billions and billions of dollars in it. Opens up, and they're losing crazy. And what they realize is that a typical Disneyland has 45 rides, and Disneyland Europe had 15 rides. So what's happening is you can get about 15 rides in a day. So yes, they had the park days right, they had everything correct, but they made a major assumption that people will stay 3 nights, and they built everything off that. So what happened was they had to hurry and build more rides, basically to fix the problem before it almost made the company. So looking at your major assumptions and figuring out where to test that. And I'll give you kind of a practical example of a client that we have. So we have this client who we were doing a wine of the month club project. So this guy sells wine, which, and if you're old enough to drink, you'll find out someday when you're 21, of course, and not a day before. Right. So he sells wine and he makes a sale, and he basically has created a job for himself. Right? He has to go on, he's got to send the email every day, and yes, it's relatively well paid, but it's a job. If he doesn't go to the job, he doesn't send out the emails, he doesn't make any money. So he thinks he owns a business, he really owns a job. Because if he doesn't show up, it's gone. Kind of like a doctor. Right? Doctors are smart, well paid, but if they don't show up, they're not going to get paid. They maybe get a couple weeks paid vacation, but for the most part, if they go away, it's gone. So right now, while I'm talking to you guys, 13 of my employees are doing work and making money and making the business better and improving. so I can step away and still make money. So this guy basically creates a business, a job for himself that leads to business. So I come to the idea with him of why don't we do an automatic monthly purchase. So yes, you sell a couple $100 a pop, but you still got to go back and get people to buy. And if we can get people to come on at $100 a month, and then keep them on for 6 to 12 months, they're now worth $600 to $1,200 in revenue. Right? I've got them on the hook, and I don't have to go back. He doesn't have to get up and send that email. And there's all kinds of crazy logistics that go with this. There's alcohol regulations. There's shipping by state. I mean, it's a big puzzle. Fulfillment of it. Who's going to handle complaints? What's the email going to look like that goes out? How are we going to get people to come back that cancel? I mean, there's all kinds of different things. But the main, or one of the major assumptions was, can I even generate leads for this? So I said, all right, we'll take $700. Let me see if I can at least generate leads for you, because if I can't generate leads, then it doesn't matter, all the other stuff doesn't matter, right? So we tested that, proved that assumption, I can get leads. The next assumption is, can I even sell anyone a month club? So instead of building all that out, we're just going to bootstrap that as well. So we're going to run it again, we're going to generate leads, which we know we can do, which we already know people will buy wine because we tested it to his regular list. And then we're going to see if we'll actually take on the wine of the month club. Now if they take on the wine of the month club, we're going to have to figure it out on the fly, but it's only going to be a handful of sales right off the start. So it doesn't have to be perfect and complete. We can literally bootstrap it and, hey, this is the way it is and this is what it looks like. Figure it out totally on the fly. And then the next question will be, can we scale this up? Can we start doing all the other problems? So testing the major assumptions is a very long answer to that. In a very practical manner as opposed to just walking around bumping into stuff, hoping that I make an RFID thing by throwing some stuff on the table.
So like BlueStamp 5 years ago had 12 kids in New York City. And every summer we get bigger, so this summer we have 230 kids in 5 cities in 5 years, so it's 11 times growth. And where is Dave right now? He's not here. He's doing stuff in New York. But he's done a good job at Josh is awesome. I'm okay. We can be here doing stuff and Dave can be away. That's kind of the idea. So shooting like for really high growth and maybe his goal is 20% or 200% growth. He might not get there, but every year is a lot more expanding to new cities, but starting small. So 12 kids. Second year, I think we had 30 kids, figured out the problems, and then it's like a full scale. Like this is our system, this is how we do it, not just in Denver, but in five different cities.
I read a book called Bold, how are you? Bold, B-O-L-D, talks about the power of computing, how it's getting exponentially bigger, what's going to happen there, all kinds of cool stuff that you guys will be able to utilize. Other questions? Good.
What do you do?
So I do online marketing. So a very divergent path to my business as well. So we get traffic to websites, and then we get whatever that traffic is to take the next action. So in our industry, there's a lot of like goofy stuff out there in terms of like what you think looks good, what I think looks good. People build stuff that way. So we actually build it, but then we go in and we test it. So we could say, okay, we think that $97 is the right price point, and you might say, I think $125 is the right price point. We can actually split that back and test that, come back and say, actually the cheaper price nets us more sales because people buy at the lower price. Or we could say, we're wrong, at $125, we sell just as much as we sell at $97, so why not get the extra $6 in the margin? Yeah. So a scientific approach, so there's an advertising, like psychology approach to it, but very scientific as well, in terms of what actually works best based on results. So I'll give you another crazy example, or interesting example, in terms of what's not possible. So we went to a client. This client spends $50,000 a month on Facebook advertising, and we went to them in San Diego, and they said we were pretty proud because we took them from like $30,000 a month to $50,000 a month. And so we walk in, and I'm like, yeah, awesome. And they're like, this stinks. You guys are doing terrible. Look at what you generated versus other marketing channels. But other marketing channels, for example, we generate like 50 leads for something. Another marketing channel generate 4,000 leads for something. So they're like, we want you to 10x this, or at least spend $300,000 next month. And so they took all the constraints off. They said, go to this next thing if you have no budget, and if you can't basically blow this up without a budget, you might be able to do it with a budget. So we honestly left the elevator, and I looked to my second command, and I was like, I don't feel like I'm probably gonna fire some 30 days. Because we were convinced like this is not possible. Like there's no way you can only target this many people, these are the constraints, this is just the way it works. And so when I talked about asking a better question, the question that I kept coming back to was, why are these other marketing channels so effective? Because they're not reinventing the wheel. So what happened was, we sat in the office and we developed this very complicated strategy. And the complicated strategy not only fell in its place, but was 20 times worse. So where we normally spend $50 to acquire a lead, we're spending $1,000 to acquire a lead. And this client was very understanding and they're super cool, super smart, and they're like, awesome. We're glad that you got this many people here. That's our problem that we're not getting them through further. But we still weren't quite satisfied. We knew that that wouldn't last for very long. So I kept asking that question, why are these other channels so much better, without having to be the expert and have the perfect answer. And we started looking at what the other channels were doing. They're very simple. They're kind of almost breaking the rules as to what you're supposed to do. And so we have this idea like, why don't we just basically replicate what's working in this other piece in Facebook? And so we'll spend now between $400,000 and $700,000 a month just on advertising, because they know exactly how much that's worth all the way through the funnel. But we were dead set certain that we were wrong, and that it wasn't possible, and that we were going to get fired. And we started asking a better question, and looking at the constraints, and looking at where is this working elsewhere, and how can I apply this to something else. So business people tend to be very narrow-sighted. So if you can take something across industry or across discipline, very often you can apply it to that. But people are just kind of doing their thing because that's what they're used to and that's what works. And they're so smart, they know it all, just like we thought we did. And that was an example of 10x.
Did you, how much of your day-to-day career did you learn in college? Where did your real learning happen?
Tiny bit in college, a tiny bit in the real world. So when I worked in restaurants, I had this general manager that would just throw me a profit and loss statement, and he'd go, "What do you see?" Better come up with an answer here pretty quick. So I started to learn how to read profit and loss statements, dig into things, and really just being in the mix is a big part of it, huge part of it. So school's awesome, all for it, should finish it, but life experience is really where it's at. And when we're hiring, that's what we look for. Look for people that are super hungry. In terms of, I've had people call us and say, I just want to come and hang out at the office for a minute. And I'll do some work, and if you think there's a fit in a couple weeks, then we'll talk. So one of the notes that I've written down is mentorship. So people are willing to talk, entrepreneurs love to talk. Put us up in front of the room and like, how to talk. You invite us out for a cup of coffee, we'll talk your ear off and tell you how smart and awesome we are and all the good stuff that we do. So use that opportunity to go out and find people. Basically, there's nothing new under the sun, right? Someone's done what you want to do and done it successfully. Seek those people out, and you'd be amazed at what a cup of coffee or an invite will open a door. Be very, very surprised. I do it to this day, because I definitely don't know how that's for sure. But I'll definitely invite someone out to lunch, invite them out for a cup of coffee, something like that. They don't teach that skill in school at all.
One more thing that I want to add, because I don't know if I remember to tell you. There's an exercise, where you ask questions intentionally for 30 days, knowing that you're going to get a no answer. So I'll do it right now. Josh, will you do a handstand in the middle of the room for us?
No.
That's like a low stakes question because it doesn't like hurt me emotionally. So my first few days of doing this, I'd go to like Starbucks and say like, "Can I have a pink straw?" I'd be like, "No." Or like green straws. Well, I can only have a pink straw, and I just go for it, and I would get used to hearing no, and now I can ask for really big things and hear a no, and I'm very not sensitive to hearing no anymore, that it doesn't do anything. So I'm more likely to ask someone out to lunch, more likely to ask someone to pay me for my services, more likely to take risks because I'm not afraid of hearing no. And that for me was one of the most like profound skills that I acquired from a TED Talk and really decided to try it. I don't know. How are you with hearing no?
Yeah. You guys are really lucky. You got all this awesome technology out there. I mean, you can literally, you can use IBM's Watson. There's an API for it, and you can plug into it if you understand how to plug in. They give it to you for free. So the amount of like computing power out there as you guys grow up, you have access to is going to be absolutely insane, like otherworldly. There's a ton of opportunity out there for you. Most successful entrepreneurs that I know are kind of B and C students. They're not the smartest kids in class. Honestly.
Why do you think that is? I agree. But why do you think?
That's a question.
I think it's just busy exploring. All of my B and C student friends, all doing cool stuff. They think we're just out
Yeah, they
exploring.
tell your parents they came to class today and you say,
Yeah. I mean, A's are fine. A's are good. But to get an A, you have to give up. I think I realized you have to give up a lot of just being out, experiencing the world. There's a time and a place. Like when you're juniors, applying to college, get some A's. It's good. But senior year, and exploring and learning and having experience. I mean, that was my path. That's not what I recommend.
I looked at it as like, I looked at people that were really great at something, right? Like to be the best in the world at something, it takes an insane amount of work. Like talk about luck, right? I mean, there's an element to luck, there's an element to hard work, there's an element to genetics. And I looked at like all the cool stuff that I wanted to do and I was like, the chances of that happening, like pretty difficult, right? But to be an entrepreneur, like you don't have to be Elon Musk, right? You have to be like somewhat fairly decent and not a total dummy. Maybe sometimes being a total dummy is actually alright. And you can be better than like the doctors, lawyers, sorry, PhDs.
Yeah, huge waste of time, by the way.
If that's what's
Waste of time.
if that's what's important.
Just threw away 5 years.
If that's what's important to you, right?
Yeah.
If electrical engineering is your deal, then that's cool. Hey, go for it.
Yeah, because like I mean, all those entrepreneurs that are going to hire all those best minds in the world kind of people, you got to keep making those best minds in the world. Everybody's entrepreneurs, nobody can hire anybody.
So true, but not everyone wants to do it. People, kids at Mines are terrified to talk to people, to clients. So I think like you are super talkative and you're friendly and you have a good vibe. So Jake's the making of an entrepreneur because you can be around people.
Yeah.
And you can make people feel at ease. Maybe not actually.
I wouldn't hire her.
You haven't known him for a while. But Paul's a people person.
That's
I'm
probably
an introvert, but
probably what I'm
person.
best at. Definitely an introvert, so I'm not like super outspoken. There are people that are more of a cool guy than I am, that's for sure. But it's using what I have to my advantage and leveraging that. So I have really good relationships with people, and that's been a big thing. So I'll give you kind of a party example. So we had a total screw up. We spent $70,000 of a client's money over 3 days and broke like every rule in the book that we're supposed to do. So we never launch, ever launch something experimental on a Friday and go off for the weekend, except we did, and basically broke every rule in the book. So they're so afraid to tell me they don't even tell me till Thursday. They tell me, hey, by the way, we kind of lose your 70 grand of this client, and they're worth a couple $100,000 a year for the company, and I'm really sorry and we screwed up. So one of my early mentors would go, okay, teachable moment, right? So how are we going to make this better? How are we going to make sure it doesn't happen again, refine our process? And next step for me was to call this person up and what's called fall on the sword, right? So some people would call up and they'd say, hey, I'm really sorry, will you please keep me on? We won't do it ever again, I promise, we feel so terrible, right? So I take the opposite end of the spectrum because I know that like they're going to be super pissed, and so why not meet them there? So I call them up and I tell them like, you are going to tell me F off, and you're going to hate me, and you're probably going to fire me, and I feel terrible, but you know, I'm in a second here, I'm just going to let you vent and to say the F word to me about 100 times. And the guy, so basically the theory is going to get him to one end of the pendulum to bring him back, as opposed to try and get him from kind of pissed off to feeling better, right? So I'm telling him, which is the truth, you're going to be pissed at me, you're going to say the F word a bunch of times, there's a very good chance you're going to fire me. If I was in front of you, you'd probably want to punch me in the face. Like, pushing him like all the way far to this end of the spectrum. Which is kind of the truth. The guy probably would punch me in the face. So he goes, no, it's all right, hold on a second. and he brings it back. So it actually kept the client on. It did cost us $17,000, which sucks, that we're going to make up for some of that. But he said the reason I kept you on is because you had the guts to make the phone call. So in-person stuff, being open and honest is important. Right? I could have sent him an email, and I could have sent him a text message, but I just knew like I had to pull it together and pick up the phone and make a phone call, and it freaking sucked. But that's the reason why they stayed on. So at that point, it didn't matter about our results. 70 grand almost didn't matter, although it matters. And it was literally about having the guts to pick up the phone. So that's something that I'm pretty good at, having difficult conversations. It's not a very quantifiable skill, but that saved us a couple $100,000.
That's quantifiable.
What's that?
That's quantifiable. There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Yeah. I'd have to work 2 engineering jobs.
We've talked about that in here, like not sweeping stuff under the rug. Everyone's done a pretty good job about that. Just like leave it out. Just leave it on top of the rug. Don't sweep it under ever.
It's never as
Unless you're gonna solve something kind of you know you're gonna handle it on your own and you don't make a big deal. Better just not to sweep it under the rug in business situations.
Yep, get it up front. Get it up front. It's never as bad as you think it's gonna be. People are super appreciative of it. They're already thinking it anyhow, so why not just say it? I just and then you're in control of it, as opposed to like, I'm going to hope and pray this guy doesn't tell me F you 100 times, if he tells me 50 times, then great, at least this way I'm in control of it. And I'm going to tell him right off the bat, you probably want to punch you in the face. And he's like, I don't want to punch you in the face. He's like, I want to kick you in the crotch.
Any other questions?
Sure.
Did you hear about like the electric bike marketing that happened for like the Saunders e-bike?
Was that a
Kickstarter? Kickstarter.
I've
Or
seen it.
Indiegogo? Yeah.
I've seen it, yeah. What a lot of people are doing is they're putting out products. I don't know all the specifics behind it.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting out what's called a minimum. There's another book called Startup. Putting out minimum viable products, and then they're letting the consumers come back and iterate on it. And consumers know that, okay, hey, I know this is new, and I'm expecting it to not be perfect, and I'm actually going to fall in love with the product and the effort, and I'm going to help you guys make it better. So it's using the crowd, basically, and their expertise to make it better, as opposed to like we have to put out the product. What was the part of it? I just know of it.
Well, I don't know. It was just a bike, and it was like, it was really, really well marketed. They raised several $1 million
Yeah.
on Kickstarter, which is like generally, you don't face that much.
There's a guy, his dad from, I think, Australia or New Zealand, that I want to say it's $12 million that they raised. A beehive to make your own honey.
I just saw that.
And they use
Yes.
3D printers to make
Yes.
it. So you don't have to have a crazy manufacturing plant. This is one of the cool things about you guys are at 3D printers. They're getting more and more special and awesome. So like Drive the Point Home, it used to cost like $50,000 or $100,000 to get so many ounces of something to outer space. Right, there's just that cost. So now with 3D printers, they can just email up the instructions. The 3D printer can print that in space. Right, so now it costs basically nothing to get that up there. So you have this like really cool exponential thing that you guys will be dealing with for sure. So you don't have to have this crazy manufacturing plant. You don't need to spend $1 million on the plant, or you don't have to even you could get that thing probably manufactured in China, but you still have to make all kinds of stuff for it. Like costs you a couple $100,000. But you're doing it for 3D printing. So it's taking that like cost per lead, what's the 10x moonshot type thing, right? How can we do this but do it for 10 of the cost?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.